to episode 386 of Cinematary. I'm your host, Zach Dennis, and I'm here with
Seth Troyer.
It's Shrek 2, the sequel, guys. It's Zach and Seth.
Oh yeah, we're back. This is the first time we've had a just me and Zach podcast since Shrek 2.
Shrek 2 2. Hoop Dreams.
Hoop Dreams. Ooh, we said that at the same time. It's like
That's the kind of podcast you're going to get into, people. That's the kind of podcast you're getting into.
That was a good assist. There we go.
On this week's episode, we're going to talk about movies that we saw this week in part 1, and in part 2, we're going to be kicking off our labor and basketball series with 1994's Hoop Dreams. Head over to cinematary.com. Hopefully by the time that this episode goes live, I will have the top 10 of the year list up on the website. I've been dragging my feet on that, I'll be honest, this week with that. But we also have a review of Drive My Car from Logan Kinney, if you've not read that, so definitely check it out. We got our whole lineup that we talked about last week for the series on the website. But let's go ahead and jump into movies that we saw this week. I'm going to kick us off with one that I saw. It just came on Amazon. I'll be honest, I just kind of wanted to watch it because I knew that Ben Affleck played a bartender who offered worldly advice to his nephew, which sounded entertaining. In retrospect,
elevator pitch.
Yeah, but in that role, he's fantastic. He is the best part of this movie. It's the latest movie directed by George Clooney, The Tinder Bar, and it's based off of the memoir of J.R. Moehringer, who is also a writer on this. I'm going to probably dig into this guy a little bit, but George Clooney directs it. Ben Affleck stars as the main character is this J.R. Moehringer. He's played as a young adult by Ty Sheridan from he's in the X-Men movies. He was in Tree of Life. He's been in a number of things. But his uncle is played by Ben Affleck, who's kind of like his surrogate father, as at the beginning of the movie, JR and his mom move back in with their family, which includes her father, who's played by Christopher Lloyd. And it's kind of just about him growing up and wanting to become a writer. And so the main thing with this movie that I have questions about is did anybody really truly ask this guy if his life was interesting enough to be a memoir? I'm gonna be super on it. There's nothing in this movie that goes, yeah, what you the experience that you went through, we definitely need a written version of this. It seems like a kind of basic ass story. So I think that the what we're supposed to glean from it is that he has this Ben Affleck, the uncle character, who just is a big a champion of him and is giving him life advice and is just he's pretty much the dad, because his dad is a deadbeat who's never around, who kind of ditches him, who only calls on occasion, is just, he's absent. And you're yeah, there's a bunch of people who have absent neglectful fathers. You're not interesting because you have that. And by the end of the movie, while I enjoyed Ben Affleck's performance a lot, I also was just what was the point of this movie? The kid grows up, he didn't have a dad. I'm there's a lot of people who don't have dads, so that doesn't, that's okay. And he goes to college, he gets into Yale, which is a big deal. I'm okay. And then after he gets out of Yale, he the pretty much the majority of the story is he's trying to get with this girl who is just completely rejecting him and kind of neglecting him over and over again until he finally realizes that. And he also gets a job at the New York Times for a little while, that thing that we've all done. And then he decides, and then he decides that he's gonna write memoirs, and I'm I don't know. At the end of this, I was I don't see why this guy, one, got to write a memoir, and two, published it, and then we made a feature film about it, because there's absolutely nothing interesting about this guy whose life was literally, yeah, like I grew up without a dad because my dad ditched me, and I wanted to be a writer one day. Like, that was his story. So, like, what the fuck was the point of this whole thing?
How about those apples?
I know. I mean, let me tell you, like, if the whole movie was just Ben Affleck, like, running a bar, it would have been a lot more fun. But instead, it's like about this kid. I didn't really care about the kid. So I would not recommend The Tinder Bar. It's pretty boring. Other than Ben Affleck, again, I'm going to reaffirm for the 18th time in this review that Ben Affleck is great in this movie. But maybe also George Clooney. Not everybody's a director, you know? Maybe, you know,
I'm not.
Seth's not, I'm not. And maybe you're not too, George Clooney. So, you know, much like J.R. Moehringer or whatever the fuck this guy's name is, maybe your story's just not interesting and you shouldn't direct movies anymore because just, I don't know. So, The Tinder Bar, it's on Amazon if you'd like to check it out, but I just explained the movie for you, and it was probably a more interesting experience, or, you know, interesting and fun experience than watching this movie. So I would just live with that.
Sounds like it should have been just like a remake of Cocktail, but with Ben Affleck.
That would have been great.
Yeah.
Like, in the bar scenes are fine, but like they're very tame. Like they have these scenes with like these kind of barfly characters, and they're very tame. You know, you're just like, I don't know. Those aren't really barflies. It's kind of like PG movie barflies. You know, it's they might as well just be drinking cranberry juice or something. Like, shit. I don't know. It was just kind of. I thought it was gonna be more Ben Affleck doing stuff, and it was not. It was more. Let's dive into the nuances of this boy's life, and I'm like, so the boy has a shitty dad, whatever. So.
Yeah.
Tinder Bar on Amazon Prime. Let's talk though about a way more fun movie.
According to us,
I guess. But and a lot of other people. There's just all the cool kids.
I guess that they are.
All the cool kids think this movie's good.
Yeah, the ones who have taken the proper pill. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. It came out right before Christmas. The Matrix Resurrections, which is the fourth in the Matrix series. It brings back Lana Wachowski as the director. And real quickly, the story is so it after the events of the first trilogy of Matrix movies, you kind of pick up with Neo once again. It seems like after the events of Revolution, he's been almost pretty much inserted back inside the Matrix and is he's alive and like living this life as kind of like a tech bro. He in his mind, he believes that like the Matrix is this video game that he created, and the video game features like scenes and the scenes and people and the experiences of the first three Matrix movies, but then all of that starts to kind of deteriorate as this new group of rebels kind of works to pull him as well as Trinity, who is also in this new Matrix world, out of it in order to save the world once again. But
he thinks he's like just a normal game developer in this scenario that he's in, and he thinks the Matrix is just fictional that he's making, which is really wild. He's like making a video game that is made from his like subconscious memories of the past three movies, basically, which I think is great. So he's sort of like accidentally leading himself to the truth again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I rewatched, or actually, I think I saw the third Matrix movie for the first time, but I watched the trilogy before watching this. Kind of, I don't know what your feelings are about the trilogy. I've always been kind of mellow on the movies, but I think I just got into them a lot more this time around. The first one I think is still the best. And I really appreciate. I think that the second and third one are I'm kind of in the camp of these are, underappreciated. Like, I think that they got unfairly maligned. Like, the second one is super fun, and the third one is great because it's just like wall to wall, like awesome, just crazy action.
Everybody should calm down. We are lucky to have them. Like these batshit crazy, multi-layered, like
well, not even like
movies,
not even like I mean, like the philosophy and like this narrative of those movies are great, but like I was also just kind of like amazed with like the set pieces. Like, you think of like set pieces, you have like the highway scene in the second one, but then also like the attack on Zion in the third movie. Like, those just the set pieces themselves are just incredible spectacles.
I mean, I'm in the same place. That I think they've been like overhated because there was too much. It's like classic. I imagine this one will have a similar trajectory, actually. That it's like, out of the gate, everyone is just like, there's just a lot of loud voices really hating on Matrix 4, and I can't help but like think it's going to kind of go this route. That like the Matrix sequels and even like the Star Wars prequels have like 10 years later sort of get this new life and new appreciation now that like the pressure has gone down or something.
Yeah, well, with this one especially, so you also have like this kind of we mentioned that the events of the previous Matrix movies are like condensed into this video game, but you also, it's a movie that's also kind of dealing with kind of this meta narrative and fandom in general. Like, it brings back the characters of Morpheus and Agent Smith, but they're not Lawrence Fishburne and Hugo Weaving. They're like new variations of it. You have all of these characters who really like have this affinity for Neo and Trinity because of what they've seen from the events of the previous movies, and I think that Lana Wachowski is I think that in her and the writers of the movie, like they're very nuanced with like how they kind of make this commentary. I think that I the more I've sat with its whole like story about being a reboot to a degree, I think that it's much smarter than people are giving it credit for. But what did you make of the fourth movie?
I mean, I really enjoyed it. I think it is a bit of it gets to be a bit of a slog in the middle for me. Like, some of the action pieces don't work as well as like the old movies do. I'm also a hard sell personally on like just like it's still going and they're still shooting and they're still like blasting away, which is why like it's amazing like they do what they do in the sequels so well. But I found that it's really interesting and hard to track, really, right? That a lot of like nerddom or whatever like seems to I don't know, they seemed like threatened or something, or like they really hated and felt like this meta narrative that's going on here, which is sort of like personal. It feels very personal. It's like literally like Keanu is standing for Lana. In like, there's even like, they are asking Keanu to make a Matrix 4 video game that he thinks is like, whoa, okay, really? We're gonna make another one kind of thing? Like, and it is like, it's a very real thing. It's silly that we need these things to constantly keep going. And I don't think it's, on the other hand, I'm one of the people who wants more Matrix, but I get that it is like, I got to admit, it is like silly that we have such a hunger for like a million Star Wars spin-offs and a million Marvel movies. But I found it strange that like these meta narratives like seem to really like get under people's skin and felt like they were being like insulted or something, where like comparatively in the same year, like the Spider-Man movie was very like fourth wall breaking, like
yeah, well, it's a good example because I think that how people have reacted to this fourth Matrix is very similar to how people reacted to the Last Jedi Star Wars movie, which is also a movie that's very much commenting on the nature of Star Wars movies. And like I think both of those are, I think to your point, like the reason people got like it gets under their skin is they do get offended because they read it as like a critique on them that they are into this stuff, and it's like, no, it's not like saying you're dumb or stupid for liking this, but it's more just investigating like why do we need more of the same type thing? Like, why do we just need to keep feeding this? Like why can't we just burn the past and move forward type thing? And so,
and it proves it again and again, making points that like once the characters do come back, they're not the same, or like when things do repeat, quote unquote, something is different, something has changed, which is always the case. Like, and that's why we like grumble about remakes and stuff like that we totally asked for, right?
Yeah, and you bring up Spider-Man, and that's a movie we talked about it a couple weeks ago on the podcast, but that's a movie that it works with people because it's not interrogating the meta, like it's not interrogating that stuff. It's more just it's like empty calories. It's affirming that it's not challenging it in the least. And so people like that one because they're like, cool, this is awesome. It's just allowing me to just kind of eat those potato chips all day. And I'm like, that's fine. But I think it's also, I don't know. I'm gonna last with me more like what the Matrix Resurrections is doing and what it's trying to say about just the machine of these franchises. And it's interesting that people just want the character of Neo or the character of Trinity to never change. They just want the same person over and over again, when I think that the nature of these movies is that these are like constantly changing alive properties. So, and
there's such a interesting aspect to this sort of, I think it's doing it in a much more mature way, because I don't know, that's my thing when I watch a lot of Marvel movies, being like a really big like comic book fan. What turns me off from them is sort of what's going on, and sometimes does happen in this Matrix movie. This Matrix movie is not perfect. It's like got all kinds of like issues here and there, and it does some of the problems. But for me, it focuses its energy in a more mature place of like both taking itself seriously and also poking fun at itself, where like feels like I can't watch a Marvel movie without constantly like every 5 minutes getting like some joke about how like Doctor Strange is a stupid name, like, and just like I can't just for 1 second can I like just take it seriously for a, like I don't know.
Yeah, it's I think that again it's kind of like that whole. And I talked about this with the Spider-Man one. It's just constantly like the whole crux of those movies is just you're a part of the club. You got all the banners. You got all the pins. Like all the things. And like the joy of the movies now, it seems like, is for those people who have all the pins and all that stuff for the movies to reaffirm to them, oh yeah, you have all the pins and stuff. And like, to me, that's not entertaining in any form or fashion, especially like going to the movies to go see a movie, go see a spectacle on the screen. I'm just like, no, I want to enjoy myself. I don't want to just be sitting there going, I know these references over and over again. And like the Matrix it does kind of like poke fun at that, but again, like what you said, like it also like builds on that. Like you have these reimagined performances of Morpheus and Agent Smith, and it's interesting like how both Yahya Abdul-Mateen does Morpheus and how Jonathan Groff does Agent Smith, because like they have like the tics and tendencies to a degree, but they're also doing their own thing. And so it's almost like this other commentary on like how how these characters and how we saw these characters changes over time.
Right.
It also makes Neil Patrick Harris a smug, a symbolist asshole, which is probably his best role.
Yeah, it kind of fits him.
Let me tell you, yeah. Well, The Matrix Resurrections is, I believe, it's still on HBO Max. It's still in some theaters. So honestly, I went and saw it in the theater. It was super fun there. But HBO Max as well, I think till the end of the month. So and I would recommend, like, again, like I really enjoyed the trilogy more this time around. I think a lot of it also is just, I kind of had the same feeling when I went back, I think it was last year or the year before, and rewatched the Pirates of the Caribbean movies. I just have like and I did the same thing with like the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies. I'm enjoying going back to like that era, like blockbusters, and just appreciating how like wild they were compared to how sterile we have now is. So
I mean, last thing I'll say on it is like, I mean, we pick apart the Matrix real hard a lot of the time, especially the sequels, but like it's easy to forget it's like basically our last like original franchise that is not like based on any existing property or a remake or like a Disney ride or a novel. Like, when was the last time there was like some kind of trilogy come out that it was just like, we wrote a story, it's new, and it's a thing now, and it's a new franchise? Like,
oh yeah, I mean, I was watching the first movie, and I'm just thinking a lot of like this, like I just imagine like how wild it was to like to watch it's such a strange movie constantly, like that it makes, it makes sense to, but it also doesn't make sense, and you're just like, what the hell is this, like half the time. It's great. Yeah. I do also want to mention, on Resurrections, that there's I think there's a lot of really fascinating, great writing on a lot of the trans allegories in the movie. I didn't want to, that's just something I would direct people to. Willa McKay's Patreon. They did a really nice review of it, and then in Reverse Shot, there's a really nice review about that subject matter. So if you're kind of looking for that as well, like, definitely check that stuff out, because it's good. It's good writing and a good reading on like the kind of transgender cinema in Matrix Resurrections. So check that out.
Well, the real last thing I'll say about it is piggybacking on that, because it was really interesting to think about that during Matrix 4, that like, yes, there are like, maybe it's going a little far in like kind of self-referencing and laughing at itself and making fun of itself, but what you are watching is someone who like was a different person, literally like a different person, when they made those first films, and now they have like come into themselves in a way different way, and now that they are like going back, and they're of course going to look at it differently since Lana transitioned and everything. I found that like aspect of it very interesting, and like, yeah, of course you're gonna look back at that stuff and be like, whoa, wow, I was really I was different back.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that, like, I'm excited to rewatch it like through that lens after reading a lot of this writing about that specifically. Though HBO Max, hey, you should probably change the directing credits on your movies for the Matrix.
Oh shit, yeah.
Yeah, you assholes. So
jeez.
Seth, you're gonna send us back a few years.
Let's get back. Yeah, I finally watched Get Back. It like took me forever to finally get around to it, feels like, but I've been excited for a while. I'm definitely a Beatles fan. And it yeah, I mean, well, I'm willing to admit it. I run into enough people that are like, you ever thought about how the Beatles are just okay? And they just got to take that hard stance, like, just because it's fun. It's cool to say that at parties. But yeah, I really was really pleased that we got so much from this, and they chose to not cut it down to a 2-hour documentary. We got, I don't know how long it is. It's big, and it should be big. Even then, though, what's interesting is it's still opaque. It's still like it's still about reading between the lines, because it's the Beatles. They're being filmed. I didn't realize like much about this whole era that was like, I think it's like the last couple months of the Beatles' career before they finally like call it quits, which is like, it's an ongoing, even after this, it's still like up for debate, like what exactly happened, why did they stop, but yeah, they're being filmed for like what is first a TV show and then becomes like they're gonna make a movie, and then like all these plans are being made and broken and made and broken, and we're watching them in real time, like figuring out what they want to do with themselves, and like writing and working on these tracks that are going to be on a hypothetical album, which becomes Let It Be. What is extra interesting is the fact that they are being filmed at an incredibly like crucial point in their career, where there is like both like a ton of pressure on them, and also they're clearly like entering that phase where they're young. They're no longer like kids anymore. They're like very much adults. They have their own social lives separate from each other, and you can tell that's happening, you know. And you can also tell that the act of being filmed is turning them on in this weird way, clearly making it difficult for the viewer to know like when they are being genuine and when they are being like kind of cagey, which of course they were already probably like passive aggressive with each other, because there's a lot of complicated drama between like say John and Paul and whatnot, so it adds an extra layer on top of that they are playing for the camera some of the time, and maybe sometimes acting in a certain way they would never have acted if they weren't like just being documented like 24 hours a day almost, not 24 hours a day, but like whenever they enter the studio to record this stuff. It was definitely something that struck home with me, being in bands, not being in the Beatles and being filmed all day, but it was very heartwarming to see that like one of the greatest bands of all time also has these practices that just go nowhere, and no one can. It's just 3 hours later, still just like laughing and like, okay, we're gonna actually do it this time. No, we're gonna actually do the damn song. And then they start, and then they just start laughing, and John sings some random line out of nowhere, and they just can't get it together. It's like, it's funny. It's just across the board. It happens.
Was there anything over the documentary that about any specific one of the Beatles, or a couple instances that like you didn't, something about their personality that was kind of, it stood out to you through the documentary?
Well, I mean, I was kind of a John hater, and this made me like John a bit more, but again, I feel like it is because John is like a great entertainer, and he is playing it up for the camera and whatnot, which, and not necessarily displaying like some of what I've read, which is him being like kind of a controlling, like throwing some fits and stuff. And seeing Paul being the most charming human being ever. Ringo definitely has. I was surprised by Ringo, because I always saw Ringo as like just clowning around or something, but he's quiet the whole, like most of the movie. He's like, if anything, he like mimes jokes, but he's like in the background, very like, which was his role probably, was to listen and like realize like I should probably listen to the genius guys and do what they say, kind of thing.
Yeah, I've seen, because I haven't watched it yet, but I've seen people kind of talk about how Ringo definitely has like the kind of, he's the youngest brother of the, like he's the young brother of the group.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's on YouTube. If anything, you don't want and you don't care enough to sit through the whole like huge documentary. There's like a clip of Paul writing "Get Back," and like literally in real time in like an hour. Like it's like a condensed hour period where John is late to practice, so Paul just writes "Get Back." And he just like does just like, oh, there it is, you know, no trouble at all. And then by the time John shows up, they're already like jamming on it, and they've got the chorus, and there it is. Like, it's easy as that.
Well, cool. Well, Beatles Get Back. It's on Disney Plus, or just pirate it. You know. Cool. Well, we're gonna take a quick break, and then we're gonna be hooping it up after this.
Hello, Cinematary listeners. This is your favorite Filipino podcaster, Jessica Carr. I'm here to let you know about a couple of things that Cinematary offers that you might not know about. First, if you're a fan of what Cinematary is doing, please consider joining us on Patreon. Remember when we weren't clamoring for your dollars? Well, now we're just clamoring for 5 of your dollars. So please help us and donate to our Patreon, and then you'll get exclusive content from our staff, including our Film Theory and Chill series, where a panel takes a piece of theory each month and deconstructs it before diving into whatever topic is on their mind from the past week. The $5 each month is investment in the website and the podcast, and it goes solely to paying our writers for the reviews each week, so please consider doing it. It's only $5. If you missed an episode of Cinematary or a piece of writing we've had, you should consider signing up for our free newsletter. Each Sunday, we send out a note with the latest podcast episode, piece of Patreon content, and the last 2 reviews that we've written at cinematary.com. It's perfect for those of you who are interested in what's happening, and it makes sure that you don't miss a single Cinematary review. Finally, the easiest thing that you can do to help us is to please give us a rating and review on iTunes, Spotify, or whatever else you're using to listen to the show. This helps us get more eyeballs and ears on the podcast and the website, and it helps the people know about Cinematary, which is really what we're here for. So to recap, consider donating to our Patreon, sign up for the free newsletter, and give us a rating or review. We would really appreciate if you could do these things. Thank you for listening, and now back to the show.
Automatic every time. Check it out. Early in the morning, I rise. I'm up, time to hit the courts real hard. You know what up? I'm just a young man with a dream, but the streets continue to test me like a full court press G. And I ain't even trying to hit it though. I'm gonna make it automatic like a free throw. See in my neighborhood, the streets are low enough to me, and I will not let the hood destroy my dreams. Well, dreams are made, they're broken, and I'm rolling as long as my jumper's struck.
And we're back with part 2 of episode 386 of Cinematary. In this part, we will be kicking off our Labor and Basketball series with 1994's Hoop Dreams, which is directed by Steve James, Frederick Marks, and Peter Gilbert. Filmed over a 5-year period, the documentary follows young Arthur Agee and William Gates and their families as the boys navigate the complex, competitive world of scholastic athletics in Chicago while dealing with the intense pressures of their home lives and neighborhoods. Hoop Dreams was originally intended to be a 30-minute short film produced for the public broadcasting service, and this 30-minute special was eventually completed under the name Higher Goals, which was exclusively directed by Frederick Marks, which was nominated for the 1993 Daytime Emmy Award for Outstanding Children's Special. The filming of the special led to 5 years of filming and 250 hours of footage. At one point in the film, the electricity was turned off in the Agee home, and the filmmakers continued filming and off-camera provided money for the lights to be turned back on without any money. The crew shot 5 days in the summer going into the freshman year, 7 days of the freshman year, and 10 days of the sophomore year. I was interested in a review, in an interview. Steve James was talking about, you know, how they got the lights turned back on, and I guess they got flack when the movie came out about doing that as like it being like, you know, like journalistic ethics. And I thought he had a good answer, because he was just kind of like
ethics.
He well, that's it. He had this answer of just like, fuck journalistic ethics. Like, these people have allowed us to be in their lives for like multiple years and allowed us to, like, you know, watch them and talk to them and like be engaged in their lives for this period. Like, we're gonna help them turn their lights on. It's fine.
Oh yeah, if you're ever like in a place where you're seeing like how wealth is not distributed properly, it's there, where you're like, I've received money to stand around with a camera, and these people who I'm filming cannot turn on the lights.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, it's time for me to give them some of the money that was given to me to stand around with a camera.
So you know, during they filmed a bunch during the freshman and sophomore years, and then the demo reels were released, and they began to hear some positive reviews and started to gain more funding, which led to them shooting during their junior years, and you know, over 100 days between the summer of their junior years to the end of the film. Arthur Agee later said, you know, in interviews about the film, that it served as both a blessing and a curse, but did laud it for helping him move his family out of the projects and providing him opportunities. He actually started a Hoop Dreams like clothing line later on. And then the only review I decided to pull, just because I think it's probably the most important one that most people know, is the Roger Ebert review from 1994. A film like Hoop Dreams is what the movies are for. It takes us, shakes us, and makes us think in new ways about the world around us. It gives us the impression of having touched life itself. Hoop Dreams is, on one level, a documentary about two African-American kids named William Gates and Arthur Agee from Chicago's inner city, who are gifted basketball players and dream of someday starring in the NBA. On another level, it is about much larger subjects, about ambition, competition, race, and class in our society, about our value structures, and about the daily lives of people like the Agee and Gates families, who are usually invisible in the mass media, but have a determination and resiliency that is a cause for hope. Many filmgoers are reluctant to see documentaries for reasons I've never understood. The good ones are frequently more absorbing and entertaining than fiction. Hoop Dreams, however, is not only a documentary, it is also poetry and prose, muckraking and expose, journalism and polemic. It is one of the great movie-going experiences of my lifetime.
Oh yeah, sure. I don't know. Jeez.
On that note, Seth, what did you make of Hoop Dreams? Had you seen it before?
Hell yeah, I don't know. Sure, jeez. Like, again. No, I had never seen it, but I had always, like, seen it around, and I'm not, like, a sports person. But more recently in my life, I've been, like, some of that has been kind of falling down, and I've been, like, a lot of the reason I was disinterested was just because of, like, people I didn't like at high school, or, like, you know, alienation at high school or whatnot. But I have been more interested in sports than ever, I think. And I think this came at a good time for me to see it. And this, of course, like, is, like Ebert said, is, like, so much more than sports that's going on here. Like, but, oh my God, just, it makes you really understand what, I don't know, it's just so multi-layered, a lot of this. I was so I was so impressed by how this was all framed. I kept on worrying that it would slant too far in one way, in the way that like certain characters, especially background characters, were being framed like, oh, we're going to sort of like make the dad look this way or make the brother look this way, but in the end it really does like do a pretty good job of being honest in a pretty great way, without, like, it does not have some sort of like artsy approach to documentary either. I was like, when you said it started out as like a 30-minute piece, once you start it, you kind of don't believe that this is about to be like a 3-hour epic. it does feel like, oh, like this is like, if you couldn't see the runtime, you would probably imagine that this is just like something from the news from the 90s or something like that, a human interest story. But like very quickly, it just opens up the floodgates, and it just, so much is going on. So much winds up happening, and there's so many issues that crisscross. The coach is so complicated. The coach is
the St. Joseph's coach.
St. Joseph's coach, which, yeah, really, like, he is so intense, and so, like, he's this guy who's working these kids so hard because he, like, obviously, like, you know, you can see it. It is, like, we do live in this system, which he frequently calls it, like, are you playing in the system? Do you believe in the system? Which the system is this sort of, like, shitty, like, loaded capitalist bullshit where, like, there's this weird thing where, like, if you get good at this game, they will give you a shit ton of money, like, if you do it just right. And I'm so therefore, like, and so much money that it's worth me, like, being terrible to you and you sacrificing your body and, like, sacrificing everything and missing your child's birth and things like that for some game. Which I thought was just so intense to witness.
Yeah, well, it shows you, like, I think, you know, this is the second time I've watched it. I remember it's been a while, though, since I watched it for the first time. And the second time, I think I was really zeroed in on the William Gates story out of the two. So what his kind of arc through the movie is, he's kind of the more highly lauded of the two in terms of playing basketball. They both go to this, they're both recruited by this guy who he's out also, they don't talk to him a bunch, but he's kind of interesting. The Earl Smith character, who is like the scout in the city, who goes to, like, the inner cities and the projects and watches kids play basketball and, like, recruits them to come to St. Joseph's, which is on the other side of town, which is the rich white kids, and, like, brings them to go play basketball there. And Arthur plays there for a little while, but then and he brings it up, you know, a bunch of times throughout the rest of the movie, but pretty much the coach, the coach that you're talking about, didn't see him as being like a valuable investment. Like, he was not a valuable investment to him, and so they kind of cast him out, and it causes a lot of, like, monetary strife, because then they owe all this money to the school and all this other thing. But William is like the much more highly lauded, and, like, he's able to stay there even though he kind of comes from the same neighborhood. He's able to stay there because he has, like, a benefactor, and, you know, like, there's the person who owns the Britannica, they're the president of that organization is, like, paying for him to, like, go to this school, and they talk to her a bunch, and she's talking about him like this investment that she, like, you know, she put money into, which is weird. But he's fascinating because it's like, he starts out and he's like, if you're, like, looking at who's better at the beginning, he's definitely the better player. And, like, his freshman year, he's really good. His sophomore year, he's really good. And then it, like, goes into the junior year where they're like, yep, this is where he's going to take the leap and be even better. But then, you know, as what happens is he gets unlucky and he gets a knee injury, and that not only, like, he's physically unable to, like, play, but clearly, like, there's, like, a mental component to it, because I think the worst thing that the coach that you're talking about does is, I mean, they rush him back from that, you know, like, his knee, he probably shouldn't have played at all that year, but they rush him back at the end of the year, and then he re-injures his knee, and he clearly has, like, some mental hang-ups about, like, feeling comfortable playing on the knee, on his knee, and stuff like that. And so, like, from what he goes as, like, the kind of, like, rising star to this kind of, he gets a scholarship and he gets to go to college, but, like, you know, he definitely is a little bit wounded by the end of it.
Definitely. I think that's what, and while it's not cut and dry like I thought it might have, I was worried it would be cut and dry between the two characters. Like, this is like the kid who did it right, and this is the kid who did it wrong. 'Cause it is like Arthur, he's the one who goes on and wins like championships and like succeeds.
He's at the public high schools,
Yeah. And like really does well. And William like has that bad luck, and it seems like even though he doesn't reach the heights of Arthur, he reaches like a different point of success, which is sort of, you can see it after a while, like he's seeing through the bullshit. And what, like, by the end, like he is almost like he's very distraught when he, like, you know, meets his end as far as like the game is concerned and whatnot. But you can tell he's like ready. He has like a kid, he has like a family, and he's been turned off by this coach who ran him so hard. And this, like, in a lot of ways, this whole system, he's seeing through this whole like system that did not care about him, not about him. And there's like a final moment where like the coach is like, well, so you're going off to, you know, do your own thing now. You'll remember me. You'll remember that what I did was good for you. And then he, like, William very much stands his ground in that scene and like just shakes his head.
He says,
like,
what is it? He says, you know, like, can I get your number so that, you know, when you call me for money, I can turn you down.
So good.
Yeah.
Say it.
It's great.
He says, like, I'm going away to college to study communication, so I'll be able to, I'll have the best way of turning down your phone call, of the best way of talking about.
It was such a, like, eloquent fuck you. I was just like, hell yeah. Like, you could have just been like, oh, fuck you. But it was just like such a, like, it was good. I was like, that's a great line, dude.
It's like he doesn't say much, like, he doesn't say a ton during the documentary.
Mm-hmm.
But
he's very soft-spoken.
As you see there, you can see like the change in him over time, and then he finally like speaks the truth there, like, which is like the fuck you to the coach.
Well, he also, you know, like through his whole recruiting process, because he's been fucked over through that junior year with the injury, but he's still getting recruited, and so it's that whole part is interesting because you have all of these like big schools going after him, you know, Indiana, Kansas, and Marquette, where he goes, is not a bad school by any stretch, but why he accepts it before the season is, one, they offer him a scholarship, and they say even if you know your knee blows out during the season, you can come here for 4 years and have a scholarship. And like I think that's kind of one of the things about this movie that it really gets at, is like that's the important thing. Like, you know, you look at him compared to his brother. His brother is this kind of side character who clearly was also this standout basketball player who seemed, you know, you kind of get the impression he was just really uncoachable. He kind of just thought he was, you know, the next Michael Jordan, and just kind of flamed out. And now, you know, he didn't get a college degree because he flamed out. And so now he's just kind of bouncing between job to job. He's, you know, trying to stay out of trouble, things like that. And he's kind of riding the coattails of his brother. And so, you know, you see the comparison of like William does all he can so he can get that scholarship so that he can go to Marquette University on a full ride. And, you know, at the very least, even if he doesn't have basketball, he'll have a college degree so he can go and get a job and kind of, you know, and, you know, you know, that like that part of it is just, I mean, that's kind of, that's what you got to do. Like, and the coach doesn't understand that, because the coach is like, well, if, you know, don't commit yet, you know, take a couple days, because like if you have an amazing season, then like Kansas is going to call you and North Carolina is going to call you, and they have such a great cut, because he's like, you know, all these places are going to call you, just take a couple days, and it goes cut, and it's them popping champagne as he signs like the letter of intent to go to Marquette. You're like, yeah, like he has the, you know, he should just do that. Like, that makes so much more sense.
Yeah, what makes sense intense, and he's not like this. He's not being a greedy fuck like where he's just like the coach who's just like, you have to just kill, like he literally says stuff like that, where it's just like, you gotta be ready to kill, like all this stuff, and it's just like, there's such a. The brother, I'm glad you brought that up. The brother is important in this because he's another example. A lot of the outlying characters are this example of like alternatives to this like this dream, which is the alternative is the more likely thing, right? That's going to occur, which is like you're going to be faced with everyday life and you're going to have to get a job, and there's nothing wrong with it, and there's a dignity to it, and I felt like he was treated with that. It's also important to remember, though, like, and the movie reminds you of that like, in this place, in this particular, like, place that these families find themselves in, though, like, the alternative is, like, it's not just like, getting a job and having to support kids. It's like very often life or death, as we see in some of this, and like so much danger in their neighborhoods and things like that, which is just like, yeah, like so intense.
Well, that's it's not in the film, but I mean that's a reality in the aftermath of this. I mean, Arthur loses his dad. His dad's shot in like a robbery, and that's how he died. William's brother is killed in a shooting, like that's a reality for them, and that's something that they're trying to escape that. Though I do kind of want to go on a bit of on a mini tangent on something, because this was something that really stood out to me, and that's I mentioned that like you have this whole treating these kids like investments. And it was kind of fascinating to me thinking about like the modern landscape of sports, specifically with college sports, where you have this element of NIL, which is name, image, and likeness, which is pretty much it's kind of the cheat code that they've come up with in order to pay pay these college athletes, because the college athletes are the ones performing all of the labor in order to lead to fans in the seats and people showing up to games and championships and all that good stuff like that. Like that's all on the backs of these college athletes who were not getting paid anything, and like the NIL is what it is. It's not perfect. They should just be getting paid wages as if like they were a normal worker. But like with sports, it's complicated because like you're presented with this whole thing of like, oh, well, if you get really good at basketball, you'll get to the NBA and you'll make millions of dollars, so it won't matter. But like, forever, you have those LeBron Jameses, you have those like Stephen Currys, you have those, but those guys are kind of like the outliers. Like those aren't like the normal basketball players are the ones who probably play for a few years, make a couple million, but a lot of that million is going other places because as you see from these characters in this movie, they're trying to get to the NBA not only to be in the NBA, but also because that will lead to money so they can take care of their families, because their family, like we said, Arthur's family, the electricity is turned off for them at some point. And so it's complicated with like stuff like, with like NILs, because, that's like a little bit of a change into the, into their pockets, but it's not enough. It's not comparable to their labor. And like you see somebody like William, who his whole livelihood is based in his body. Like it's all of that is based into his, everything that he can make in terms of money through this job of playing basketball is in his body. And like that's something that is just tragic watching him go through, because like that injury, I think the fascinating thing with it is just the mental component of it. Like you can clearly see that he's mentally not the same, and they make mention of it. The coach does, but it's kind of dismissive, but like he's mentally not the same after the injury. And it's tragic because I mean he's not, that's his livelihood. That's what he's at least at this point used to like kind of get him to that next level, and he's like physically unable to do that because they're taxing him and putting all these miles on it, because they're making him, the coach is pushing him to this level through high school. And so it's, as they go through these different levels, like you look at how the coach is treating the kids in this movie for high school. So just imagine how taxing that is on the body. Then they go to college, and it's even higher degree of like taxing on the body. And so then they get to the NBA, or they get to that professional level, and it's no wonder that a lot of athletes like don't last very long. Like, it's just like they've taxed their bodies so much, and so then they get to that final level, and a lot of them are not making that LeBron or Stephen Curry or Michael Jordan money, because they're not there long enough, and they don't have that pedigree. And so it
by that time, you're exhausted. It's amazing to watch. I can't imagine. Like, after watching this, it like makes it seem like this was just getting through fucking high school. Holy shit! Like, and these kids seem destroyed and like mentally like a little traumatized. And,
it shows how like fragile it is. Like, I don't know. Like, if you're studying to be like an engineer, or you're studying to be a doctor, you're like in school studying for something, I don't feel like the trajectory of your career is as fragile as this. I mean, like, think about like that small ligament in his knee derail. Like, he could have maybe been the next Isaiah Thomas, who knows, but like, he had that injury, and he was pushed too quickly to get back, and it messed with him physically, so that he was really unable to perform at the level that they were wanting him to, but it also screwed him up mentally. And so now you don't know anymore.
Absolutely. But yeah. But again, there is something to be said about William going through that and having this, like, at least a bit of clarity there at the end with a lot of it, and not letting it just be like, oh, I failed, like, I was destined to fail or something. Like, no, like, a lot of this was fucked. Like, a lot of this was like, they treated you like they used the word thoroughbred, like, throughout this, like, in reference to these human beings, and yeah, like, again, like, he wasn't able to, like, he missed, like, like, the last game or whatever. Isn't there the whole thing where he showed up like 3 minutes late, and the coach like benched him?
Yeah, he was benched for like the first half, or something.
Like, of course, fucked with his head, and then the coach still like holds on to that, even though like they lost the game, and like maybe he would have been like in a better place and could have like helped to win the game, but the coach holds on to it as like, you'll thank me later, you learned a lesson.
It's a teaching moment. Yeah, it's a teaching moment. Yeah,
which I also can't help but like see, like, the racial dynamic. He's a white coach. I can't help but see this like sort of like racial dynamic there. There's no overt like racism or something, but there is like this weird like I'm giving you this like secret knowledge that you people don't understand, or like
Well, there's definitely like a kind of gatekeeperness to this whole St. Joseph school. Not just the coach, but like it's like this. That's why I said at the beginning, like the recruiting guy is like kind of fascinating, because he goes and like picks these kids out and brings them to this school, and then like, so we can talk about Arthur a little bit. Like, he's taken to the school, he's not seen as like a sound investment, and so they kick him out, and then they're like holding his transcript, so he's unable to like pass. They're making him pay back all this money because he doesn't have a benefactor, and he's going to like this private high school in Chicago, and so then they're like financially in trouble. It causes a rift in like his parents' marriage. Like,
yeah, it should have never happened, basically.
And it's all because this school was like, yeah, well, you seem like you're good at basketball, and they went, well, you're not as you're not at to the level of basketball that we want you to be right now. So get the hell out of here. It's it's absurd. And so I don't know. I think this taps into like, this is much more of a thing with college athletes, because they're just seen at college and that's why I mentioned NIL, because for so long it's like, no, it's kind of like the coach going, this is a teaching moment. Like, college sports is supposed to be like, oh no, you're getting your exposure, and you're gonna get you're going to be really good in college, and then you'll get to go to the NFL and be amazing and make all this money. And I think about like athletes, somebody like Todd Gurley, who was a running back for the University of Georgia and then went to the NFL. And while he was in college, he was an amazing running back. Like, he was really good for 4 years, was just incredible. And then he gets to the NFL, and he's very good for a couple years, but then his knees give out. Like, he at this point he's not playing in the NFL because his knees literally cannot probably keep up physically enough for him to be a person that could be good at football in the NFL. Was it worth it? All that led up to it, that he got 3 or 4 good years in the NFL. I mean, he made decent money, and for the rest of his life, he'll probably make good money because he'll be able to do speaking things, and he'll be at parades waving for the University of Georgia for the rest of his life. But you think about all those years of effort that he gave to the college, and how the coach there is making $10 to $12 million a year. I was thinking this morning, was all of that labor that he put into football equitable? Was it equitable to what the school and coaches made for using his body and using his likeness? And I'm like, no, it wasn't. And I was thinking about that in relation to William and Arthur. William was somebody who was driving people and driving money to this high school, and then was just kind of cast off like a rag doll whenever he was hurt that year. And he talks about it. He has that one interview at the end of his junior year where he's talking about how his name's not even on the plaque for the team, and he's just kind of like what am I doing here? It's just such a fucked system.
It is. Again, system, yeah. And it's it's a little window into a greater system, and that's what is so profound about the movie, is it's, infinity in a grain of sand, the oldest cliche, zeroing in on, it's just going to make it about football. No, it's never just about basketball. I mean, it's never just about basketball. Once you start actually zooming out, you see this is all connected, so many injustices and so much economic ridiculousness.
But then and this movie does a really good job of not being a Hoosiers or something where it's just this kind of sports fantasy. But then at the same time, the last part of Arthur's career where his high school, they make that run and they win the city championship and then finish third in the state playoffs. That whole sequence is so exhilarating. As you watch them win games, and you see Arthur and his family react to it, that, even though it's this much more nuanced drama than just being about sports, then it reminds you also why they do it, because there is this ecstasy in that whole run that they have during his senior year.
Yeah, every celebratory scene is treated in such a naturalistic. There's very few slow-mo, there's no Baba O'Reilly playing on this, it's
yeah.
just quiet, and you hear just there's no music, and you hear just the screaming fans, and it's really chaotic. When they win a game in this movie, and like everybody runs out onto the field, it's like intense, and like they're just like breaking down sobbing. A lot of these men who you watch through this being like, because a lot of that, you know, a lot of the way they're brought up and a lot of the culture that they're in is so like tough, masculine. Like in any other scenes, we don't see, like, we barely see them speak to the camera, or like they're too shy, and like they don't show emotion. And then when they win a game, they are literally sobbing and like falling on the ground. It's like so intense to witness, like just how much, like, yeah, and understandably that how much this means to them, you know, like.
Yeah, and like that's you know, it's unfortunate that you have all of the facets of athletics that you do that we've like outlined so far, because like at its in its most pure form, like that's what it's supposed to be. Like that's what it's supposed to be about. Like those, like the moment when they're lifting Arthur up after they have that big upset, you know, things like that. Like that's what it's supposed to be about. But you know, unfortunately, in capitalism, it's not. You know, like it's,
yeah, that's like a little icing on the top, you know.
Exactly. And it's also, I mean, you know, thinking back, it's interesting that like Arthur kind of gets the big, you know, kind of quote movie moment when it comes to like the whole basketball run, when William, who's kind of the more highly touted, highly lauded basketball player, he never really gets that, you know, like they have a night, they kind of, they talk about how they have a good run in the playoffs his first 2 years, but then he's hurt, and then after that, you know, his last year they have like an upset loss and lose early, and he's, you know, as you just described, like he's crying, but it's not because he's happy, it's because they just like lost this game and it's his last game in high school. And so, you know, it does kind of show this parallel of like, again, how fragile all of this is. It's just constantly fragile.
And it's so intense that it has to be so extreme, that it's, in a lot of the ways, because of how fucked a lot of the system is, it is so like either you're fighting to turn the lights on or you're a millionaire in a lot of these kids' minds, and in a lot of ways it's like the truth in the way that like the system works, and like how fucked it is, that like finding some sort of middle ground is like not even an option in a lot of ways, which is so unfair. Like,
and it's interesting, like they're in Chicago, so naturally like Michael Jordan is a figure, even though he's not talked about a bunch. They show like clips of Michael Jordan at the beginning. Mainly they talk about Isaiah Thomas, because Isaiah Thomas of the Pistons, he went to the high school, that the St. Joe's High School. It's interesting how, you know, people like Michael Jordan and Isaiah Thomas are like viewed in this movie. Like they are almost like these like deities almost, you know, they're almost like these gods, you know, like you have the scene very early when Isaiah Thomas comes to the high school and like plays one-on-one with Arthur, which is kind of like just this highlight for Arthur, especially when it comes to basketball at the beginning of, you know, for those first 2 years of his career. But like they're just constantly talking about them, almost like they're figures that aren't like human figures that exist, but that they're just like these like gods that kind of descended on Earth, that like were here at this high school for a little while and then they're gone, you know. Like I don't know, to me I was just kind of like thinking about that, as well as like how these you know, basketball players are personified for these kids.
I mean, yeah, and it's very fitting that they're treated that way in the film too. Like they're not, there's no big like interview with Isaiah, and like I feel you get the feeling even if they could get Michael Jordan in this movie, they wouldn't, like almost for this like, or it's more fitting for the film to focus on these two and this reality, which is like not seeing this like lofty artificial sort of dream that they live in,
Yeah, well, it's Steve James had a really good quote in one of the interviews that I was reading from him, where he's like, they were talking about how in the Dissolve oral history that they did of Hoop Dreams for 20 years, and he's talking about how they had to like develop the relationships with these kids, and he was talking about talking with Arthur's mother one time, and he was like, it was after St. Joe's that they had learned that St. Joe's had kicked him out, and that he was going to Marshall, and that they were dealing with, and like it seemed like she was kind of going like, do you even like want to like still keep like doing this? Like, it doesn't seem like, if he's not going to be there, it doesn't seem likely like he's going to go to the NBA or anything, so like why would you want to like follow him? And Steve James, the director, is just kind of like, I mean, we're not following these kids because we think they're going to go to the NBA. We're following them because they have this dream, like they just kind of have this pure dream to play basketball. And I think to your point, like that's what this goal is. It's not you don't need Michael Jordan or Isaiah Thomas talking about their experiences. It's about the non-legend people. It's about the normal people who just have a dream to play basketball. And neither of them really did. Arthur played 2 years, like, in college, and that was about it. William played at Marquette for a couple of years, and then he graduated. He's like a pastor now and like runs a church. Like it's just like, I don't know. It could have been different, but at the same time, like, it's, who cares that it's not? I'm sure they would have liked to be in the NBA, but I think that their lives are they're probably satisfied with their lives as they are. And we said when we were talking about William, like, at the end of the day, he got the scholarship. He got to go to college and kind of get out of there and be able to really like find a career, find something through going to school, getting out of kind of the cycle that is his neighborhood.
Yeah, and it's not this like either I go all the way or it's just over sort of thing. Yeah, which, yeah, ideally that's the goal that these kids can reach. And it is interesting that the coach that coached Arthur, who actually went further with basketball, seemed to comparatively have more of a realistic approach to the whole thing, which he seemed to be very much more about like, it's great that we're able to do this. It's great that we're able to get to, the state championship or whatever. It's great for a player to do that. Like, he's like, but he seems a little bit more like down to earth, that like, this is a nice thing that you're doing. This is a great thing you're doing in your life that, it could, but he's not constantly like forcing this whole, like, you're going to be in the NBA narrative on Arthur, it feels like, at least in the way that Williams' coach is, which is like, yeah, it's like either you're gonna be a winner or I don't want to like fucking talk to you, and you're just gonna like might as well go out there, and you get the feeling that he's just has this very much like, just go out in the street then, screw you or something.
Well, there's this one game where Arthur has like a really like scores a bunch of points and kind of like has some swagger at the end of the game from a couple like moments, and he gets into the locker room and the coach is just like, yeah, well, you turned the ball over 7 times, like, and it's not in a like, he's not yelling at him in the way like the St. Joe's coach is. He's kind of going, yeah, you like swaggered around there, acted like you were Isaiah Thomas, but you turned the ball over 7 times. So like, get over yourself a little bit, type thing. Like, come like real, like, you got to recognize that even though you have talent and you're scoring points and you're doing well, turning the ball over is kind of, falling backwards a little bit. So you're falling, like, don't do that. That's not what we want. No, that coach was way better. That coach was I liked him a lot.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts on Hoop Dreams? I mean, I really believe, like, even if you're not a sports person, I think you should watch this. I think it's great, and honestly, I think for being almost 3 hours, it moves pretty quickly. I think you get engaged in it because you get invested in like the path of the lives of these kids, and it's fantastic.
Yeah, it feels like something, if it were to come out now, it might have like more of a get back treatment, where they would have like been able to maybe sell it as more of like, we're gonna make a few episodes of this. Like, it is one of those things that really sustains itself, and like even after 3 hours, you're like, I would take more, because there's more. There's just so rich.
Well, and it's worth, like, I assume with Get Back, you didn't sit there for 8 hours and watch it, correct?
No, I did
exactly.
not.
So, like, it's something that, like, I like that the experience is all packaged into one for 3. Like, this is what Ebert's talking about. Like, it's all packaged into one for 3 hours. And so, in the one sitting, theoretically, you're experiencing this whole journey, and I think that there is something to that makes it more impactful, that all in that one sitting you're experiencing all of this over 3 hours, and that's why it's 3 hours. That doesn't it's different than something like, like when OJ Made in America came out a couple years ago, I sat and watched all like 8 or 9 hours of that in one sitting. And it made a difference because it was like you were sitting with this narrative from start to finish all in one sustained time. When it's set up episodically, so you could sit there and watch an episode like a night or something like that. But there's something different when you're, and this is the basic difference between movies and television, of you're sitting there for one sustained experience for 3 hours. And I think that Hoop Dreams is a perfect example of why that's beneficial, because I think that it changes how you engage with the story.
That's very true. Forget what I said.
I think you're right too.
I agree with you, actually. Yeah, absolutely. Like, that is what really works here. And making it episodic would make it feel more like it is like what it originally was, right? Which was just a snippet on the news or something, or just like a short documentary in pieces,
Yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, I just that's the difference between it being episodic and it not. There's not one is not better than the other. It's just, I think that the story works better in this way. The story works better this way. It just, sometimes maybe some wouldn't, but this one does. I don't know what to tell you. But yeah, no, watch Hoop Dreams. It's really good. It's fantastic. Well, that will wrap up this episode of Cinematary. You can find us on Cinematary on Facebook at facebook.com/Cinematary, on Twitter and Instagram at @Cinematary, and on Letterboxd at letterboxd.com/Cinematary, where we post all the movies that we talked about in this episode. If you'd like to support the show, head over to patreon.com/Cinematary. And thank you, big thank yous to our patrons: Cam, Chad Newsom, Corey Willingham, Harry Eskin, Candace Sisson, Ron Hayes, Titus Arthur, Tyler Chandler, and Whitney Rio Ross. Thank you so much for your patronage. Next week, we're going to be continuing our labor and basketball series with 1998's He Got Game, which we got 3 bangers for this series. I'm really excited about it. But until then, thank you guys for listening. We'll see you next week.